This episode, we're going to be talking about George Osborne, Article 4, and some productivity apps. Hi and welcome to episode 4 of Peg TV. My name's Rob Stewart and I'm going to be taking you through the next 10-15 minutes or so of some very powerful property questions. Now, before we start, we're actually, you might not be able to see this, I don't know, is it off camera, Ross?
Actually the leg of the tripod's
The leg of the tripod's in, so Ross might do a bit of a pan. We're actually recording this in 360, so that's really exciting. We're playing around with this little camera. So at some point we're going to put the 360 video out as well, and you can play around with that, scroll around. But one of the things I've always committed to you with Peg TV is to be at the forefront of strategy, of technology, of everything that we do. So 360 this episode, we'll see how it goes. Next episode, we're going to start live streaming on the Scope, on Periscope. So if you want to do that, follow me at RobProperty on Twitter, and I know Ross will put some nice, cool little overlays at the bottom. So at RobProperty, and then you can watch Peg TV live. I know everybody likes to get behind the scenes and see stuff that's happening live. And actually, we'll cut to the other camera and we can say hello to Sally.
Hello.
And we can say hello to Scott.
Hello.
Who's the longest house guest we've had here. It's been here all week. But that's cool because, as I said, we are working on this breakthrough project, which is very exciting. So, good. I think it's time to get on with the show.
Okay, so first question is from Jay Britton. Is now a great time to invest, or should people be shrewd? Wait and see the full implications of George Osborne's measures.
Jay, 2 questions, 2 episodes. That's definitely a Peg record. I know we're only on episode 4, but it's good to get these records going. So Jay, you hold the record for the most questions on Peg TV so far. So what should we do with the tax changes? Okay, here's my very passionate view on this. It all depends on the figures of the deal. So think about what your investment strategy is. Think about what works for you. And if you can still find things that hit your goals, you should invest in them. So for example, my investment strategy is all based around a return on my capital employed. Okay, so that's the ROCE. So it's all about how much money I leave in a deal and then what return I'm getting off that on a yearly basis. And I've got some fairly firm criteria that I use. And if I find a property that hits that criteria, I will attempt to invest in it, either with my own money or raise finance through joint venture funds, or do something creative, no money down. I'll try and make it happen. So when the tax changes come in and when the stamp duty changes come in, and when Peg TV episode 4 is aired, we're probably going to be just about the time that hits. What's going to happen? We don't know. I personally think there's going to be a dip in the market. We're already seeing larger investors sell off their portfolios, so there's going to be deals. Yes, we're going to have to think about the new tax changes and how that's going to affect our interest rate relief, but as long as you find a deal that the figures work, it's still investable, and that all is based on your personal criteria, Jay. So I would have down on a piece of paper exactly what you're looking for, exactly what the criteria are, and if it hits that criteria, invest in it. So for the stamp duty, you might just have to negotiate a bit more off the price. If it's interest rate relief, you might want to gear less so your return on your capital employed works better for you. So only you can make that decision. But will there still be fantastic deals out there? Absolutely, there will be. And I'll give you an example. One that we're flipping at the moment with a joint venture investor came through a deal sourcer, and we purchased it for 75,000. We put it straight back on the market, didn't need any work doing to it, and we sold it 3 weeks later for 103. Now, if we were in the post stamp duty era, we might just accept a little bit of a less of a margin on that. But if the margin still hits our criteria, then it's good to go. So in the last episode, Jay, we talked about being contrarian or not. There's going to be a lot of people scared about the market. There will be deals presented and there'll be opportunities presented. Now, if the market suddenly goes into free fall, that could be a different thing. But if you invest for return on capital employed, even if your property value is going down, I'm not saying go and buy stuff that's plummeting in value, but if it's still hitting your investment criteria, then it's good to go. So because we do everything on return on capital employed, let's say the property market, halves in value overnight, I don't really mind because I haven't invested for capital uplift because that's my strategy. So it all depends on what your goals are, Jay. So it'd be great actually to hear what your goals are, and then we could give some specific advice to that maybe on the Facebook page. Hopefully that's helpful. Sally, let's go for the next question.
From Matt Preston, I've done quite a bit of research into Article 4 planning around conservation areas. Can you answer, if I was interested in buying a property to convert into a professional HMO in an Article 4 direction area, what is the most useful process and timescale of planning application?
Cool. Ross, you're going to have your work cut out fitting all that text onto a page. So usually we would go for Twitter questions. I know some people post on Facebook. The great thing about Twitter is it's shorter in length. So it means Ross has less post-edit to do to fit the questions on. But that's cool. I'm sure you'll make do with that. So Article 4. The reason an area will have Article 4 on it, and by the way, a lot of people get a bit mixed up with Article 4. Article 4 is not just an HMO thing, it's any planning restriction in an area. So council could say, in this area, it's a heritage area, you're not allowed to change any windows, for example, if it's like a load of Grade 2 Georgian listed buildings or something, without planning permission, although that might be a planning thing anyway, coming to think of it. Anyway, so Article 4 could be any planning restriction. Generally, something or somebody puts Article 4 in an area because they're trying to stop a problem. So with HMOs, if an area is becoming over HMOified, an Article 4 will generally come in to make it more difficult. You have to put a planning application in to get that. Now, depending what area you're in, and I don't know what area you're in, Matt, but sometimes it'll be impossible. So for example, I know we've got an Article 4 in Chester around the university area. It's called the Garden Quarter, and that is just, sort of ghetto student land, and you will not get planning, because I've consulted with the planning department on a sort of student HMO there. However, some other areas are more lenient depending on what the criteria of the Article 4 is. It could be a bigger Article 4 area, but actually they're really concerned just about a few streets. So if you liaise with your planners and they say, actually, if it's in this location or it's this density, then it might stand a good chance of getting through. So we have people on our academy who have successfully bought properties in an Article 4 area, put a planning application in and got them accepted as an HMO. The big thing to do is liaise with your planning department before buying the property. If you do buy the property and you haven't liaised with the planning department, then have another exit. So I would always want 3 exits in any property. So it could be that number 1 is your HMO. Number 2, do the figures still work with a single let? Number 3, can I renovate and flip on as a flip, for example? So you've got those options in case you don't get the planning. How long will the planning application take? Fairly standard. Get it in as soon as possible. Make sure you get plans drawn up properly. Get them done by professionals. Don't try and do it yourself. Generally, a planning app will take 8 weeks. If it gets rejected, you can then appeal. That could then start to get into the months. Okay, so it's going to be 8 weeks minimum. I would speak to your planning department before buying, liaise with them. You might have to put a pre-app. In the meantime, you can put an offer in for the property, which is an offer subject to planning or even exchange subject to planning. So that's a really good thing you can do. So actually exchange, tie that deal up, go for the planning. If it falls through, then you don't exchange on the deal. Best of luck with that one, Matt. By the way, just before we hand over to Sal, you can probably see in the background, we're paying a little bit of a homage this week to Leicester Tigers Rugby Club. Our man, Greg Bateman. In fact, Ross, could you put Greg's Twitter handle down here so people can hook up Greg? Very kindly invited me and John down to meet with the RPA this week, and we've had some interesting chats with them about some work we can do. So thanks very much for that, Greg, and we'll look forward to continue working with you. Cool, on to the last question.
Okay, finally, from Ryan Whiston. Hi Rob, seeing as you're a systems man, could you give us a little insight into what technologies, apps and tools work best for you? This could be property related or more of the simple day-to-day stuff.
Ryan, I'm a systems man, you know the way to my heart, and that's asking me a question about systems. And actually, the best system, in fact, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. A lot of people say systems, what's it all about? What actually are systems? I used to think that systems were something that you put into your business, systemize it so you can go and sit on the beach, drink pina coladas. And those of you who know John, my business partner, know that he is partial to a pina colada or two. Sorry, John. But actually, about 18 months ago, I had a bit of an epiphany that systems are not about doing that. It's about taking a lot of the day-to-day tasks away from you so you can spend your time in something called Quadrant 2 activities. Now, if you go and read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Habit 3 is all about time management, and Covey talks about his time management matrix. Cut a long story short, I'm not going to regurgitate the book now, say go and read it. Quadrant 2 is all the stuff that is building your business. It's things that are really important but not very urgent, so you don't do them, like strategize your business, develop relationships, raise finance, do things like mergers and acquisitions, things that are not that urgent, so they never get done, but they're the most important things in building a business. So what systems do is give you the ability to sit in that quadrant and grow your business and work on your business. So here's some examples, Ron, of things I use on a day-to-day basis to make my time more effective. Now, one of them is communication. I make it very difficult for people to get hold of me, and I'll be fairly brutally honest about that. So I only open my emails twice a day, 10 o'clock and 4 o'clock. The reason I do that is so I can get here to the desk and do a high-level task before I even open the email. Because otherwise you start doing email ping pong and direct messenger and you get distracted and you don't do anything. Now my voicemails go through to a Skype voicemail box, which is monitored by my virtual assistant. So the whole comms flow, there's generally a barrier between me and everyone. We heavily outsource. So virtual assistant in the Philippines, and we've actually got a virtual assistant service if that's of interest to anybody. And they monitor voicemails twice a day. They'll listen to them and send me an email with those voicemails. But nothing is urgent enough that it has to be done straight away. Ross, could you maybe put some overlays on of the apps that I'm talking about so people can see that? That'd be really cool. I communicate with my team via an app called Slack, which is on the iPhone, which is down here somewhere. So it's almost like a Twitter feed, like internal team Twitter feed. So I can talk to my whole team at once or individuals, and that's a great way of doing it. Because again, I don't like email. I do all my project management on an app called Asana. Again, all these things are free, by the way. So Asana is a project management tool, and actually Asana talks with Slack. So it's another great way of collaboratively. Can't speak today. Working with the team. Everything is hosted in the cloud. So we have everything in Dropbox. Our training academies are in Dropbox. So there's some real quick win productivity tools with you. What I suggest we do actually, Ryan, is maybe we ask another question in the future. So what are some property specific apps that we use? We can kind of go into those in more detail. But I always think start at the beginning, make sure you're working effectively, and there's some great apps you can do to do that. Now, my one bit of advice with this is do not get addicted to information and apps, because these things are actually sometimes the worst things in the world, sometimes the best things in the world, because you sit there and you're kind of plugged into the information flow and overload that comes from your phones, and that's really distracting. That's actually probably quadrant 4 stuff, which is things that are not important and not urgent, but we spend a lot of time in it. Like, I think, does anybody know what the average amount of times that we check Facebook as a nation every day?
I dread to think.
16 times a day is the average that we check Facebook. I would say eliminate that straight away, unless of course you're doing Facebook marketing campaign, but even then you probably only need to check it once or twice. So eliminate a lot of that stuff before you start trying to build the business, because otherwise you're putting water and your time into a leaky bucket. So clog up those holes in that bucket before you start putting a lot of time and effort into it. So Ross will, he will have already done it actually, already put those things on the screen. So that's cool, go and check those out. Asana, Slack, Skype voicemail, virtual assistants to outsource, and that's a great system, by the way, as long as you get the training right, and we can, of course, help you with that. Excellent. I think that answers the question. Peg TV episode 4, that was a lot of fun. I like talking about system stuff, so please keep that going. We'll get some guest speakers in soon. But in the meantime, everybody have a great week. I've been Rob Stewart, helping you achieve more with less in property, business, and life.